I'm so sorry this is so long. Maybe I included too much detail. I don't know. I don't post very often. This took place a while ago, around 2015, but I'll probably never forget it. I'm around 21 at the time, was still fairly new in my city. I had just gotten out of a bad relationship, wasn't in the best place mentally, and didn't know a lot of people in town besides my ex and his friends. I was on a dating hookup app, looking for people to hang out casually with, maybe find a friends with benefit or something. I had matched with the 25-year-old guy, Simon. We talked sporadically in the app for a few days. He explained that he was in a band and living in a house with his bandmates. He sent me their music. It was just an audio on YouTube with a heavily edited still image of 4 or 5 guys playing rock instruments. One of them looked like him. The music was an interesting combination of styles, and not really for me, but whatever. He seemed like a nice enough guy. He stopped replying for a few days, and I figured that was that, and moved on. Then one day I was at work and got a message from him saying sorry he'd been so busy and inviting me to a barbecue with his friends and bandmates in their yard. He had explained to their band manager, that their band manager was providing them the house to live in. Based on the lack of views on the YouTube video and the fact that I only saw one photo of him playing in the band, I figured he was probably exaggerating the band manager thing. I thought it was more likely something along the lines of a bar manager friend giving them a discount on rent in exchange for being a house band at their bar or something. I didn't think much of it beyond that. Normally, I would have just said no to going to a barbecue alone at the home of someone I really didn't know. But I was really bored and figured I might be able to overcome some social anxiety and maybe even make some female friends there, since he made it sound like a pretty big party. I put the neighborhood he gave me into maps, and it was a suburban area with lots of families as far as I knew. I figured being in a yard on such a nice summer day wouldn't be overly risky, because lots of neighbors would be outside. Plus, it was just a few train stops away from my workplace, and I was off in a few hours. I did tell him I wasn't overly comfortable with the idea, since I didn't know him well, but I would stop by for a bit if I didn't need to go inside the house at all. He said that was totally fine, which made me feel a lot better. I even made sure not to drink anything for the rest of my shift, so I wouldn't be risking needing to go inside to use the bathroom. I was anxious about just showing up to a barbecue with people I didn't know at all, as he implied that the event was already underway. Plus, I would have had a hard time finding a specific address from the backyard side, so I asked Simon if he could meet me at the train station, since he said it was a quick walk away. He agreed to do that, and I let him know when I was leaving work and what time maps said the train would get to his station. I sent Simon a message to tell him that I had arrived at the train station around 5:30 after I looked around and couldn't find him. He told me he was running behind and to just start walking towards the neighborhood. I was about halfway across the massive train station parking lot when I saw him slowly wandering towards me. I recognized his clothes. He was wearing bell bottoms when they were not common, especially for men, and long hair from far away, but up close his face looked pretty different from his photos. There might have been some heavy editing. I don't even know. But he kind of looked like a different guy. Older looking than 25-year-old guy in the photos by 5 to 10 years. Maybe used photos of his brother or something. I don't even know. It was before AI. This was the first real red flag, but I brushed it off. Maybe he's just self-conscious. Maybe he smokes a lot and didn't wear sunscreen and hasn't taken pictures in a while. All of his pictures looked candid, so I figured he wasn't much of a selfie guy. And besides, I'm mostly here to make friends anyway, so I shouldn't judge his appearance so harshly. He was also clearly already drunk, but a lot of my ex's friends were heavy drinkers, so that didn't seem strange. He's hosting a barbecue after all. The second red flag came shortly after when we arrived at the front door. I reminded him that I wasn't comfortable going inside the house, but he assured me we would have to just walk through to get to the backyard. Okay, fine. It wasn't the kind of neighborhood where you could just walk around the house to get to the backyard. We would have had to go back, track to the main road, and to go down an alley directly to the backyard. I figured he just forgot what I said about not wanting to go inside and didn't want to cause a bunch of trouble, so I went with it. We got in the house and he immediately closed the door and locked the deadbolt and knob behind me. I didn't think that was too weird since nobody was hanging out inside, and a lot of people are just in the habit of locking the door when they come in, but it did still give me the heebie-jeebies for some reason. Simon then told me he'd really like to give me a tour of the house. I politely declined and reminded him that I was just there for the barbecue. He said that he and his bandmates had worked really hard to get the house, and he was really proud of it. At that point, I was getting really skeptical, because usually when guys would tell me things that seemed a bit far-fetched, they'd let the truth slip by the time they got me into their house. But still, I convinced myself that I was being unreasonable. I was already in the stupid house anyways. He insisted it'd be quick. Not the wisest choice, I know, but I was pretty good at explaining away red flags, so at this point, Simon still mostly had a dopey stoner art guy kind of vibe, as far as I was concerned. He really didn't seem like a threat. just an insecure oddball who sucks at communicating and fibs a bit, not unlike my ex, who was definitely emotional and verbally abusive. But it never escalated past that. I figured at worst, he'd get handsy and I'd get called the prude for not sleeping with him. I didn't have a lot of self-worth at the time, obviously, so I went with it. The tour started pretty uneventfully, other than the decor in the common areas was obviously chosen by a middle-aged Martha Stewart enthusiast, not a bunch of the guys in the band or their fake band manager. I didn't know if this should make me feel better or worse. On one hand, he was clearly lying, but on the other hand, it made me think it was probably just someone's mom's house and she was out of town. He didn't want to tell me he lived at a friend's or a friend's parents' home and didn't actually have a paying job. Again, total red flag, but I could rationalize it at the time. The bedroom doors were all closed. Bedroom was unremarkable. And then he showed me the kitchen, and I finally saw through the window that there was nobody in the backyard. There weren't even barbecue supplies around, no burgers thawing on the counter, no cocktail supplies lying around, nothing. I asked him where everyone was and why he lied about the barbecue. He told me that his bandmates were on tour still. They were just running behind due to the van trouble, but they should be back any minute so we could start the party. I asked him why he wasn't on tour with them and if he's in the band. I don't even remember what his answer was, because it didn't make any sense. At this point, I'm out of mental gymnastics to convince myself that this guy isn't just completely full of shit, and I'm really freaked out. I started trying to figure out a way to get out of the situation. I hoped that once he was done with the tour, we could go outside, even just for a minute. I'd just leave. I'd been in some sketchy situations in the past, but luckily nothing so bad that they tried very hard to physically stop me when I walked away in a semi-public place. I just wasn't comfortable doing it inside the house. I knew this guy was full of shit, but I had no idea how much worse it would get. I instinctively pretended to believe his bullshit. He offered me a beer. I said no thanks, because I had work in the morning. He said okay, and cracked one for himself. Then he wanted to take the tour downstairs. I could see from the top of the stairs that the basement was dark and creepy, with really small windows, so I refused. I asked if we could go back outside. He said after the tour. I tried to argue about going into the basement. Told him I have a spider phobia, don't like basements. All the lies, but anything that wouldn't let him realize that he was what I was afraid of. He started to get agitated about my reluctance, so I figured it would be better just to let him show me the basement, and then hopefully we could go outside, because I really didn't know what else to do. The basement was fairly unremarkable. Couch, TV, elliptical, until I noticed something that gave me chills. The house was probably built in the 1990s or late 80s at the absolute earliest, but I saw a door that looked just like the heavy, foam-lined door to the cold storage room in my grandma's house, the kind that only opens from the outside. It was just a small version of the big metal doors on commercial walk-in fridges. It looked really out of place in this house. I would absolutely not go anywhere near that door. He opened it and told me it was their soundproof music studio. I looked inside from a few meters away. It did indeed look soundproof. It was about the size of a bedroom, and I could see a few guitars and amps in it. Mattress toppers on the walls, no drum kit or recording equipment that I could see. He insisted that I go inside to get a better look. He was standing outside the door, motioning for me to go inside. The alarm bells are really going off now. At this point, I realized I could totally die here if I'm not careful, and I turned around to run up the stairs. He closed the door and followed me, asking what's wrong, acting like I'm being all unreasonable for not wanting to see his soundproof music studio. So I'm realizing that this is a way sketchier situation than any of my ex's bullcrap, and I'm freaked out right now. At that point, my main objective was getting out of the house. The front and the back doors were both closed and locked, so if I tried to run, he'd be able to get to me before I could get the locks open. The bathroom did not have a window. The house had a convoluted floor plan that I wasn't familiar with, and he was much bigger than I am. He was the tall, lanky type, who can run fast even if they're out of shape and smoke a pack a day. I pretended that I was okay with hanging out with him in the hopes that he'd chill out a bit. We made small talk for a few minutes. He cracked another beer and thankfully he calmed down. I desperately mentioned yet again that it was beautiful outside and suggested we go sit in the yard while we wait. He said no and started to get agitated, that I wanted to leave already. I told him that I could stay, but I just really like to smoke a cigarette. He told me that we could smoke cigarettes inside and pointed to a cereal bowl full of cigarette butts. We sat down at the table and lit some cigarettes. As he was smoking, he started rolling a joint. which he promptly lit as soon as his cig was done. He offered me some and I said no thanks. He insisted, so I took the smallest puff I could. I'm a pretty seasoned weed smoker, but I pretended to cough excessively and told him I'm a novice, so that's more than enough for me. For a liar himself, he thankfully wasn't very good at picking up at all the lies of others. After we smoked, he asked if I'd like to watch a movie until his bandmates got back. I told him that I was really looking forward to spending the day outside and suggested we go for a walk or visit the park, ideas he did not like or appreciate. At this point, I was trying to keep as much distance as possible between us, but he stayed close enough to me that I could smell the beer on his breath. He grabbed me by the waist and I backed away and asked about the barbecue food to try and change the subject and make him think I still believed what he was telling me. He started to get angry again and sternly reiterated that his bandmates should be home any minute, and my anxiety was absolutely through the roof. I tried to calm him down again with generic small talk. I don't know how I got so lucky, but the next thing that happened might have saved me. Simon went to the fridge to get another beer and pulled out an empty box. At this point, he's getting even more pissed off than before. So I went out on a limb and suggested we go get some more beer for the party, because I was out of ideas. I was terrified that it would enrage him even more to suggest, once again, that we leave the house, but I had to try. Thankfully though, his eyes lit up with the possibility that I could actually be down to drink with him, and he agreed. As we were walking to the liquor store, I still didn't really have a plan because I was no longer comfortable just walking away from this menace in this weirdly desolate suburb, but I was extremely relieved to be out of that house. I walked with him to the liquor store, and when we got there, told him I didn't need to go inside if he was just gonna go grab some beer. He insisted that I had to go inside at that point. I was so stressed and frazzled I just went with him and hoped that a good opportunity to leave would arise. When we got inside the liquor store, he asked what kind of beer I wanted. I reminded him that I had to work tomorrow and didn't want to drink much. He demanded to know what kind of beer I wanted, so I just named the first one that came to mind. We went to pay. The cashier was kind of an a-hole, so I didn't ask for help. I probably should have, but I panicked and didn't. I hoped there might be somebody in the parking lot who might help me if I made a scene, but there was nobody. I really regretted not asking the liquor store guy for help, but also remembered the times my ex told people I was crazy so they wouldn't take me seriously. Liquor store guy definitely seemed like he would have fell for that, so probably for the best I didn't expect him to help me. I had one last idea before I took my chances, just trying to run or scream. There was a drugstore across from the liquor store, and I told Simon I had to go buy a toothbrush or something that vaguely implied I might stay over. He eagerly agreed to this, but tried to follow me into the store. I told him that you're not allowed to bring beer into a drugstore. I don't know if that was even true. I really doubt it's any kind of a law, but luckily, this drunk douchebag believed it and agreed to wait outside. Now, my naive self thought maybe I could just wander around in this drugstore for long enough, and he would either get the hint or get sketched out or bored and leave. But no, I must have wandered around the store for at least half an hour, and this guy is still just standing there, staring in the window. This creep didn't even have his phone out. Every time I checked, he was still there. He was just staring through the window looking for me. I didn't feel like I had anybody I could call in the city to come help me. The cops here don't usually take things like this very seriously, and the store workers looked like they were mostly high school students, and I didn't want to drag them into this, so I really didn't feel like I had a lot of options. After being in there for so long, I was surprised he didn't come in to see what was taking me so long. I thought maybe I could lose him in the aisles and sneak out of the store if he did come in. But nope, I ended up hovering around the tills and waiting until a big group of friendly-looking people were paying. I followed them out of the store and immediately told Simon to leave me alone and go home. I said it firmly and loudly enough to imply that I would make a scene if need be. Simon looked at the people getting in their car, who were now pausing and looking at us because I had nearly yelled at him. Then he just turned around and left. It was bizarrely anticlimactic, which I was very thankful for. I ran to the train station, which thankfully was in a different direction than his house from the store, and I never heard from him again. When I got home, his app profile had either blocked me or been deleted. Years later, after I stopped compartmentalizing the whole thing, I wish I would have just reported him or something. It bothers me to wonder if he tried it again with someone else, but made sure the fridge was stocked first. But at the time, I didn't think anybody would take me seriously. I was embarrassed of my choices and just wanted to move on from the whole thing. Plus, all I really had was the first name and general idea of where the house was, which probably wasn't even his. I'll probably never know any more than I do now, and maybe that's for the best. Thank you for staying till the end for this long story. If you enjoyed listening to stories like this, then please check out my other videos on the channel. And if you like horror content, make sure you like and subscribe. I will continue uploading content like this, and of course the movie breakdown videos. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.